Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I first want to say to my friend from California, I appreciate his work in this overall bill, and I know there's a lot of challenges that confront any of those decisions that the appropriators have. But I find that it's necessary that I offer my amendment to call attention to a problem and an issue, and to hopefully gain some time to solve that problem. So my amendment, Mr. Speaker, is rather simple, or Mr. Chair, I should say. It eliminates funding for the Congressional Office of International Leadership, also known as COIL. Our national debt is $34 trillion, and I've been working on that in a bipartisan manner, trying to attempt to bring that down and find solutions. But we all know, our constituents know, that whether it's gas at the pump or grocery store, American families are feeling the full impact of inflation. In the midst of this spending and affordability crisis, the American people may not be realizing that Congress is funding an office called COIL, which has been inappropriately used to host social justice-themed adventures for foreign delegations on the U.S. taxpayer dime. This is the U.S. taxpayer funding trips of foreigners to come into the United States to ostensibly learn about our system. After uncovering this office priorities earlier this year, we did a little more digging, and only to find at least 13 other trips occurred in 2023 and 2024 with themes involving social advocacy or diversity, equity, and inclusion programming exclusively. For example, in March of 2023, a COIL trip came to my district without any notification or the courtesy of letting me know that there was a foreign delegation coming. This foreign delegation was treated to a trip filled with social justice and DEI messaging under the guise of, quote, civic advocacy. Stops also along the way included an evening at, quote, queer theater, a visit to a, quote, Pride Center and Trans Foundation, and many more. Other trips in 2023 and 2024 included a visit to Detroit under the theme of inclusivity and tolerance, and a trip to Sacramento, California to engage in gender-related activism. American taxpayers should not be funding this, Mr. Chair, and footing the bill for these visits. And we have disagreements about whether those things are important or not, or whether they should be highlighted or not. The question here is whether the taxpayer, the U.S. taxpayer, should be paying for a trip for foreigners to come to our country to learn about these things. And I kind of wonder about my friends on the other side of the aisle, because many of us believe that the shoe's going to be on the other foot after this November, whether they might be offering the exact same amendment if this COIL now was directed to do only things that dealt with fossil fuel organizations, or maybe weapons manufacturers, or maybe only for pro-life advocacy groups. My guess is they would have a very different view of this program. So what's more, members of Congress are shielded from conducting any oversight on these funds. Excuse me. Consider the process. COIL puts together a calendar of themes each year, and then COIL then grants funds under the themes selected to national and community organizations. That organization will then make a sub-grant to a local level to an NGO to fully implement the trip programming at their complete discretion. In other words, COIL doesn't even have any input in on this. COIL has zero say in the programming because the funds are shielded, what is essentially a pass-through entity. What are the results? Unelected bureaucrats using the American people's money to push an agenda that fits their interests, and COIL walks away with their hands clean. So, again, all at the American taxpayer's expense. So while COIL has been flatlined at $6 million to fund for a number of, funding for a number of years now, the 2025 Legislative Branch Appropriations Bill actually provides a 10% increase in that funding. This is an additional $600,000 in taxpayer dollars going towards who knows what. Now, I know there are positive programs, very neutral programs, consensus-building programs, whether they be regarding and surrounding veterans groups, protecting children, those with disabilities. Those are not the controversial parts. Again, I would still ask whether our U.S. taxpayer dollars should be funding that rather than an NGO or some other funding. But we have to weed this out and make sure that this is acceptable programming-wise to all American taxpayers. So, Mr. Chairman, this is a common-sense step to rein in out-of-control spending by bureaucrats in Washington, and a one-year pause provides a much-needed opportunity to reevaluate. And with that, I reserve.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim time in opposition.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I oppose my friend's amendment because I do not believe all the good the Congressional Office for International Leadership has done for Congress over the last 25 years should go negated by one embassy programming selection. The Congressional Office for International Leadership links members of Congress to leaders in Eurasia and Asia and is an instrument for Americans engaged in citizen diplomacy. COIL's placed as the only regularized international exchange program in the legislative branch, provides opportunities for members of Congress and their constituents to engage with their peers from countries of strategic importance to the United States. COIL convenes a congressional leadership and its constituents to provide foreign visitors with a multi-level, state, federal, and local introduction to American democratic governing systems and accountable governance. This is the next generation of government and civic leaders where they begin in the halls of the most powerful legislative body in the world, the United States Congress. The exchange establishes a personal and profound connection between leaders from around the world, providing unique and meaningful insights and experiences while fostering a spirit of cooperation and mutual respect. Thousands of Americans across the country benefit from the hosting COIL participants in their homes and communities. The agency provides an important service for a very modest amount of money. I oppose the amendment and reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman has the only time.
I yield to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Espiot, for a minute and a half.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chairman Valadeo, this is the way government should work. I agree with the chairman, and I join the chair and rise in opposition to this amendment. At a time where international conflicts are on the rise, it is vital for America to lead and spread democracy. In fact, for 25 years, the Congressional Office of International Leadership has sponsored political and civic leaders of participating countries to exchange democratic best practices and encourage mutual understanding. In 2023, COIL brought 532 rising leaders from 24 countries to these United States, facilitated meetings with more than 100 congressional offices, and showcased 62 American communities in 37 states. Mr. Chairman, eliminating this program is another attempt to divide us further and prevent our country from doing what it does best, leading by example. I urge my colleagues to vote no on this amendment. Isolationism is not a political tool that should be exploited at this time when we face international conflicts, and they're on the rise. Mr. Chairman, I'm glad that we're both on the same side on this issue. And Mr. Chair, I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I yield to the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon, 1.5 minutes.
The gentleman from Nebraska is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this amendment. I do recognize the concerns of Mr. Huizenga. I think they should be corrected, but there's a lot of goodness in this program as well. Let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Early this year, we mourned the murder of Alexei Navalny by Putin, an anti-corruption activist and courageous leader of the political opposition to Putin of Russia. Navalny's legacy of leadership has been recognized and honored all over the world. While many are familiar with the renowned life of Navalny, most do not know that he first came to America in his early 20s under a Congressional exchange program for emerging world leaders, the same program this amendment now seeks to defund. The Congressional Office for International Leadership, or COIL, was founded in 1999 to promote democracy and accountable governance. For more than 2 decades, COIL has been investing in the best and brightest young leaders from around the world to show them how government of, by, and for the people functions and remains accountable to the people it serves. Since 1999, COIL has introduced more than 30,000 young leaders to the United States of America to see firsthand what self-government looks like at the federal, state, local level in all 50 states, all for about $6 million a year. And I've helped host 3 of those delegations, 2 from Vietnam and 1 from Papua New Guinea. And I was surprised to see the Vietnamese members that came here were of the initial parliament in Vietnam, seeds of democracy that we want to water, nurture, and grow. So, Mr. Chair, the COIL program promotes and inspires America's foundational values. I ask my colleagues to join me in opposing the amendment, which would end one of the most cost-effective ways the United States Congress, the most powerful and consequential body in the world, can grow and inspire America's future allies and leaders. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Chair, I yield back the balance of my time.